A bow, your shoelaces, a knot on a rope, your hands behind your back if you're into that kinky shit, and the series when you're down 2-0. Yes, these are all things that you tie. The Washington Capitals, winners of a pivotal Game 4, which was either going to pull them back even in the series, heading back home to Washington, or have them on the brink of elimination, and clearly they were not in the mood to stare down elimination at home on Saturday as they dominated this game from start to finish. And now here's the thing. I was asked by a friend of mine, shout out to Caps fan Tommy Walsh. Anyways, he asked me if, in my video following the Caps Game 4 win, I could drop some splinters on those Columbus Blue Jackets fans who were not only predicting, but actually guaranteeing that the Jackets were going to sweep this series after 2 overtime victories in the first 2 games. Games, I might add, in which their Jackets were massively outplayed. You could call it bold, you could call it a jinx, or you could call it stupid and ignorant, but that's where we stand and that's what we've seen. So splinters you request, splinters you shall receive, and ironically, splinters are probably exactly what all of the Blue Jackets players are going to have after the always cool and collected John Tortorella goes berserk with a wooden baseball bat inside the locker room and breaks all of their kneecaps while shouting, "We sucked! We sucked!" Anyways.
Linda, listen, Linda, listen.
Yes, listen, Linda. Blue Jackets fans, let me give you some advice from someone who's been around this playoff block a few times, someone who would know. And you know, all of the tips that I'm about to give you, I forgive you guys, really, if you did not know any of this, because much like your goalie does not have any experience winning a playoff series, neither do you guys. And in fact, you guys had never even led a playoff series before, so we get it. You're inexperienced, you're a virgin, it's your first time dealing with all of these emotions, and you're nervous and you're easily excitable, and you just didn't really know quite how to contain yourself from running around telling the whole world that you got a lead in a playoff series, and that's not your fault. Look, all I'm saying is that it makes sense to me that you don't really know how to act or how to conduct yourselves when you're in such a position that you're leading a playoff series. But that being said, remember, I said I'm going to give you guys some pointers. So probably one of the number 1 rules of thumb is that you do not want to get cocky when there is still lots of hockey left to be played. You do not want to get cocky when you've only won 50% of the games that you need to win in order to advance. You do not want to go about guaranteeing ridiculous things like you're going to sweep the other team. Again, after you only have 2 wins, especially when those 2 wins came by the way of overtime and games in which you were massively outplayed. You don't want to go guaranteeing ridiculous things like you're going to sweep the other team. You just don't do it. It's not how you should conduct yourselves in such a tenuous situation, because here's the thing. The hockey gods do not smile upon that type of behavior. And again, I understand if you didn't know the rules because, you know, it's your first time. Like I said, we do have to be a little bit patient with the first timers, and it was your first time leading a playoff series. So again, it makes sense that you didn't know how to conduct yourself. But now you're seeing what happens when you anger the hockey gods, when you go making ridiculous guarantees. And what we are seeing now is the karma, the karmic retribution, if you will, coming around to correct such ridiculous behavior. And now, pardon me, this is quite a rant. And now, Columbus Blue Jackets fans have suddenly gone from guaranteeing a sweep to now they possess such a shaken state of confidence that they're resorting to things like booing their own team off the ice at Nationwide Arena. Oh, how quickly things can change. And Columbus fans, another thing that you probably don't want to do is you probably do not want to attempt to taunt the goalie who is completely owning you in this series. I was utterly confused when Blue Jackets fans started to sarcastically serenade Braden Holtby in this game at a point in the game when he hadn't even let in a frickin' goal yet. That's the first problem with their taunting, is that they haven't had enough practice at, you know, actually being in a playoff game to know when to properly taunt someone and when they'd be better served just shutting up. And oh, by the way, it didn't work, as he let in just a single goal in this game, and even that one goal had to come by way of a crazy deflection. And Braden Holtby now sports a 1.33 goals against average and a .940 save percentage in this series. And more importantly, the Caps are 2-0 in games that he has started in this series. So if the Blue Jackets were the scrappy underdog who looked like they were on their way to winning the series after the first 2 games, Braden Holtby is the big bad beast who comes home just in time to catch the underdog trying to steal his lunch, and he punishes them by eating them for lunch instead. That's what's happening. So yeah, not really understanding where you're going with that sad attempt at taunting Jackets fans. Maybe one of you can explain this to me. Anyways, this Braden Holtby owning the Blue Jackets thing is not something that's new and or just exclusive to the playoffs either. He's had their number and made Nationwide Arena like his favorite vacation spot ever since he came into the league. So maybe Jackets fans are just a bit testy because they know he's going to send them to the golf course. The other great story, of course, about the Caps coming back in this series is that Alex Ovechkin famously guaranteed that it would happen. After a heartbreaking loss in overtime at home in game number 2, Ovi said after the game how much, and I quote, fun it was going to be to come back to Washington for game 5 on Saturday with the series tied. So the dude is either Nostradamus or he's just a super confident dude who believes in himself and believes in his teammates, and he knew that his Caps are the better team and that if he played like it, they would come back in the series. Either way, Ovi spoke, and the Caps listened and followed their captain's leadership, and now here we are, just as Ovechkin guaranteed, coming back to Washington tied. Ovechkin also did not leave his guarantee up to chance at all, as he was an absolute beast in the 2 games in Columbus, racking up 4 points and about 300 shots on net. The grade A now has 3 goals and 3 assists for 6 points through 4 games of this series. And of course, after being held off the score sheet in game number 1, Ovi has back-to-back multi-point games. Unleash the fucking fury. Finally, I just wanted to share with you guys, and with Caps fans especially, what the TSN panel had to say about the way that the series is shifting in the Capitals' favor. Yes, I live in Canada and we get TSN. I know, be jealous. Anyways, they were talking about John Tortorella's post-game press conference and the way that he sort of, let's call it, freaked out and walked out of the press conference. And the analysts on TSN think that this was a reaction to something larger that's going on, something that Torts has already figured out, but maybe his players and definitely the Columbus Blue Jackets fans have not yet caught hold of. So TSN had this to say, went something like this. Listen, John Tortorella is a smart hockey guy, obviously, and so he can sense what's going on here. He can feel the tide turning. He knows, listen, the Washington Capitals are an organization and a fan base that is starving for playoff success. They'll do anything to get it. And this Washington Capitals franchise, they've had more bad luck in the playoffs than any team I could ever possibly think of, and it's been going on for years. Ovechkin, greatest goal scorer ever of all time, and he's had so much heartbreak in the postseason. They are ready for their luck to change. And Torts knows. And you can sit here and pretend that this was just 2 wins on the road, but that's not all it is, and Torts knows that. He can feel the snowball building, and it's turning into an avalanche right now before his team's eyes, because in game number 3, what happened is you have this team in the Washington Capitals who has had so many bounces go against them over the years. Pucks have gone in on them in every fluky way you can possibly imagine to end their spring early each and every year. And what happened in game 3 is that in double overtime, they finally got a bounce like that going for them. And now what you have is an extremely talented group of players saying to themselves, hey, we just got the bounce that's been going against us all these years. This has to mean something. And you could feel it. You could feel it in the way that they came out and played tonight. They can feel that the tides are changing, and they played like a confident team who knows they're going to win, and that's exactly what they did. So, do I think this is just simply 2 wins on the road? No. I think it's much bigger than that. I think the Washington Capitals players can feel it. I think the Washington fans can feel it. And I think the coach on the other side, John Tortorella, he can feel it too. And I think that had a lot to do with his reaction tonight, because it's a little bit panic mode right now for the Columbus Blue Jackets. You've got to find a way, if you're Columbus, to stop this snowball from rolling. And personally, I just don't think it's going to happen, because Washington has so much talent, and when you take that much talent, and now they're really starting to believe in themselves, it's hard to stop. And kudos to Alex freaking Ovechkin, because he really got it all started. Oh, I think you're right, Bob, because when he didn't even flinch in his response after game 2, it tells you he's confident in front of the cameras, he's confident in the locker room, he's confident on the ice, he believes his team is going to come back to win, and when you add Braden Holtby back into that equation, I really just don't see this thing slowing down for Washington anytime soon. So, there you have it. I don't know if the guy's name was actually Bob who was on TV, I just made that up, but anyways, it was some dude, supposed expert, who's on TSN, and he actually said he played for the Caps for a couple of years. I don't know who he was, but must have been before my time, before I was born. I didn't recognize him, but anyways, he said he played for the Caps for a couple of years. Now he's an analyst on TSN. His name's probably not Bob. It wasn't Bob McKenzie, by the way. But anyways, that's what he had to say. Basically, the feeling that he got from this game number 4 and the game number 3 that preceded it was that there is something much bigger going on here in this Washington-Columbus series right now, and he doesn't think that Columbus is going to be able to stop it, because sometimes when you have, as a franchise, this much built-up frustration from 44 years of things just not going your way, and finally you get a bounce in double overtime that finally goes your way, sometimes that's all you need to have you just take off. Sometimes that's all it takes. So hopefully that's what's going to happen for the Caps. It certainly looked like that's the way that this is going to play out in Game 4, as they were, like I said, completely dominant. And hopefully it continues in Game number 5, which will be from Capital One Arena on Saturday. Hope to see you all there.